Welcome to the Creating a Travel Authorization Part 2 training video. By the end of this video, you will know how to enter the expense information for several other frequently used types, including hotel lodging, automobile rental, meals and incidentals, and automobile mileage, and how to save, submit, and check an authorization for errors. In the last video, we created an authorization with the airfare expense. The next expense we'll want to select is hotel lodging. To add a new expense to the authorization, select the plus icon to the right of the expense. Enter the date, and then type in a brief description as needed. Select the payment type, and then select the arrow for additional details, if it's not already. Enter the billing type, and then the location field. Type in the first few letters of the state that the hotel is in, and select from the options that show up. Alternatively, you can select the magnifying glass and choose an option from there. If the hotel is in another country, you will select the international option from the choices selected. Type in the number of nights you anticipate staying and the nightly rate which you can estimate if you are uncertain of the exact rate. Similar to the airfare, you can select your preferred hotel chain in the preferred field or select an option in the non-preferred field. Select the Accounting Detail button to change the fund and cost centers if needed. If you don't see an account listed, make sure to rather type one in or hit the magnifying glass to be able to search for it. An account must be listed, otherwise there will be an error that shows up. Now that this expense is complete, we will add a new line and put in the meals and incidentals expense. Enter the date and payment type, and in the description field indicate any pertinent information about that expense. Select the billing type, and in the location field, select the city that you will be traveling to. If the city is not listed, you can rather select the biggest city closest to your destination, or the standard rate by searching for standard. After selecting an option, the per diem range field will appear, and only has one option that you can select, 0 to 365 days. You can then hit the refresh button to automatically populate the amount field with the per diem rate as it is taken from the GSA website. Hit the Accounting Detail button to change the fund and cost center if necessary. Instead of recreating this expense for each day of travel manually, we can use the copy feature in the system to do this quickly. On the Actions box in the top right, select Copy Authorization Lines, and then hit the Go button. Here you can choose to copy the expense to a specific day or a range of days if you have multiple days that you want to copy to. Always begin with the second day of your trip, as you have already entered the information for the first day already. If you're going to be gone over weekends or holidays, you must select the appropriate box in order to receive per diem for those days. Select the expense that you're wanting to copy, and then hit the OK button. And you can see that the same expense now appears for all new days and is listed with the appropriate detail and information you typed. Add a new row and select the automobile rental expense. Enter the date, description, and estimated dollar amount, and then select Personal Credit Card for payment type. If your rental car is directly billed to your front-end cost center, you would select Prepaid Expenditures and Non-Reimbursable instead. Make sure to enter the state that you are picking up the car from into the originating location field using the magnifying glass to search for that state if needed. For the merchant field, the only preferred option in the system is Hertz Rent-A-Car, so if that's not your preference, select another merchant in the non-preferred field. You can then check the accounting detail for errors and move on to the next expense. Next, select Automobile Mileage. Enter the date, payment type, billing type, and description as needed. The two location fields will be the state that your starting and final destinations are in. The current IRS mileage rate is provided in the system, so in the miles field, you'll enter the total number of miles that you will drive round trip. You can then hit the refresh button to populate the amount field automatically. Enter the number of passengers that you will have and check your accounting detail to complete the expense. When you're confident that everything is complete, select the Save for Later button to save the authorization. If there are any expenses that are errors, the system will highlight these fields with errors in red, signifying that you need to fix something, and display a red error flag next to that expense. Most of the time, this is because there's a mandatory field that you missed or typed in the wrong information for, which you can easily go back and correct if necessary. If there are no errors, you can then hit the Summary and Submit button. It will take you to the Summary and Submit screen where you can add notes if you forgot to on the first page. Some good notes to add would be the nature of the trip, any students or people traveling with the traveler, or if the authorization is for a non-employee, the name and other pertinent information about that individual is required. When you're ready to submit, hit the check box and select the Submit Travel Authorization button. If you choose to submit the travel authorization, please note that you cannot go back and make changes, so if you think you'll need to go back and make changes later, hit the Save for Later button instead. Once submitted, the approval workflow will begin. To print the authorization, go back to the Travel and Expense Center by selecting the Home button. Go to the View option, select the Search button, and find the authorization that you just submitted. On the bottom of the screen, you'll see the workflow and all the people that are going to be involved. This is a way that you can follow along and see where the authorization currently is at. At the top of the screen, you can select the Print option, and a PDF version of the travel authorization will be able to be downloaded or printed as needed. In review, each expense type has its own unique set of fields that must be entered in order to proceed. Some fields may have the same name but have different options to select, so make sure that the information you enter is correct. Once the authorization is free of errors, you can enter the appropriate notes and submit it for approval. After an authorization is submitted, you can go to the View option, pull up that authorization, and print it for further use.